What's up, everybody? My name is Brad, and today I've got another book review for you. And we're in front of the Stephen King shelf, so you know what that means. And today I'm going to be talking about The Institute by Stephen King. This is his newest release. It came out in September of 2019. I just read it in January of this year. I did a buddy read on this with my friend Bookmark Beth. I'll put a link to her channel down in the description. She already put out her review on Friday, I believe. So be sure you go over and check out her thoughts and her review on the book. I'm going to read the synopsis real quick, and then I'll get into my thoughts and feelings about the book. In the middle of the night, in a house on a quiet street in suburban Minneapolis, intruders silently murder Luke Ellis's parents and load him into a black SUV. The operation takes less than 2 minutes. Luke will wake up at the Institute in a room that looks just like his own, except there's no window. And outside this door are other doors, behind which are other kids with special talents, telekinesis and telepathy. Who got to this place the same way Luke did? Kalisha, Nick, George, Iris, and the youngest of them, 10-year-old Avery Dixon. They are all in front half. Others, Luke learns, graduate to back half, like the Roach Motel, Kalisha says. Kids check in, but they don't check out. In this most sinister of institutions, the director, Ms. Sigsbee, and her staff are ruthlessly dedicated to extracting from these children the force of their extra-normal gifts. There are no scruples here. If you go along, you get tokens for the vending machines. If you don't, punishment is brutal. As each new victim disappears to back half, Luke becomes more and more desperate to get out and get help, but no one has ever escaped from the Institute. As psychically terrifying as Firestarter and with the spectacular kid power of it, The Institute is Stephen King's gut-wrenchingly dramatic story of good versus evil in a world where the good guys don't always win. So first and foremost, I want to say that this is not a horror novel. I believe it won the Goodreads Award for last year for Best Horror Novel of the Year. If you go into this thinking it's a horror novel, I think you're going to be disappointed. This is not a horror novel, at least in my opinion it wasn't. This is more of a thriller, psychological thriller, sort of mystery novel. But in saying that, I still really loved the novel. It was a fantastic read. I gave it 5 stars. It's out of Stephen King's newer books, like the Bill Hodges trilogy, The Outsider, Revival. This has been my favorite one of his newer stuff. At the beginning of the book, we follow a character named Tim Jameson. He is on an airplane, and for some reason, he has this gut feeling that he needs to get off. They're trying to free up a seat for like a federal agent or something, and he decides to volunteer and get off the plane. He doesn't really know why. He sort of has this calling, if you will. He's sort of following, the beam, the path of the beam. And he does mention that later in the book, following along the path of the beam, which ties into the Dark Tower. But he was going from Florida up to New York, I believe. So instead of flying, he starts to hitchhike. And along his journey, he ends up in the small town of Dupre, South Carolina. He gets a part-time job as a night knocker, which is sort of like a security guard with the police department, going around, knocking on people's doors at night, checking locks, making sure businesses are secure and things. Since it is a small town, they don't have a large police force. So that's sort of his part-time job, being a night knocker. And we followed him for the first, 80 pages, 100 pages or so. And then we completely leave his storyline. And we move up to Minneapolis with Luke. Luke's like 11 or 12. He's a super smart kid. He's a genius, in fact. And he has slight telekinetic powers. Not much. He can sometimes, and he doesn't even really know how to control it. Sometimes his door to his room will close, or like a pizza pan might slide across the table. Really small stuff. But as it said in the synopsis, Luke is kidnapped, his parents are killed, and he is taken to this place called the Institute. He wakes up in a room that is I can't even say it, is really similar to the room at home. There's a few slight differences, sort of like Twilight Zone-ish a little bit. The main difference is there's no window in his room looking outside. It's just a block wall. And this is where, he starts to encounter the other children that have been taken to the Institute. Kalisha, Nick, George, Iris, to name a few others. And we start to learn a little bit about what this institute is through the eyes of the kids, what they have gleaned since being there. But there's not much information for them to go on. They know that kids, there's two sections, there's front half and back half. Kids don't stay in front half very long, like 2 or 3 weeks is usually the most. And then they're sent to back half. None of the kids know what happened in back half. They just know it isn't good. No one ever comes back from back half. But there's lots of tests done on the kids, different experiments. They're pumped full of different drugs that they don't know what they are. And it seems like the doctors at the Institute, the people who are running it, are trying to get the kids to see what's called the stasis lights or stasis lights. And somehow that interacts with their inherent either telekinetic or telepathic abilities. I don't want to go into that too much further for risk of spoiling anything, but I really loved the kids in the book. Stephen King, as always, he is great at writing and developing characters. He's also fantastic at writing kid characters. There isn't another author that comes to my mind that can write kids better than Stephen King. There's just something about it. He gets kids, he gets their dialogue, how they act, how they treat each other, and they're so believable. Out of the cast of kid characters, I think Avery Dixon was probably my favorite. He's introduced to the Institute a little bit, like a week or so after Luke has been there. But then we get to follow Luke on his journey. Like I said, he's a genius. So he starts to figure things out about the Institute that the other kids don't know. And we follow his journey. Like I said, I don't want to spoil anything. But there was really intense moments as we're following Luke on his journey, being in the Institute. And there was one part where I really thought, something bad was going to happen. Like I said, I'm being really vague. I don't want to give anything away. But it was really thrilling to follow Luke on his journey. And eventually it all wraps back around and we get back to Tim Jameson in South Carolina. The South Carolina characters are really great. There's a character named Orphan Annie who lives in South Carolina. She's a homeless lady. She's sort of a conspiracy theorist, believes in UFOs and aliens and walk-ins, which that's another reference to the Dark Tower. She listens to this radio show about conspiracy theories and shadow governments and all that kind of stuff. And on that show, Salem's Lot is mentioned, which is short for Jerusalem's Lot, which is where the book Salem's Lot takes place. So that was another tie-in to the broader Stephen King universe, which I enjoyed. But once we get to sort of the build-up and the climax, the finale, if you will, at the end of the book, I really enjoyed that. That was well done. It was very fast-paced and thrilling, and I didn't know what was going to happen, who might live, who might die. Because with King, you can never tell. And usually anybody is up for grabs. But I thought the climactic battle, or whatever you want to call it, was really well done. I like how Stephen King kills his characters with no fanfare. There's no big build-up to it sometimes. Sometimes it can almost feel anticlimactic, which some people might not like. But I really enjoy that because it really reflects real life. People die, and there's in just the most mundane situations sometimes. But I really like how he captures that feeling. It can be the hero of the book or the big bad of the book, and they just get killed, and Stephen King moves on to the next scene, and so on and so on. Recent events, there was the tragic helicopter crash in California that killed Kobe Bryant and his daughter and 7 other passengers, I believe. But Kobe Bryant, he's this larger-than-life athlete and hero to a lot of people. Millions of people loved him. And he is tragically killed, in the blink of an eye. And like I said, that sort of harkens to King's writing, where we can have, this big character in the book, and they die and they're out and they're done super quick, sometimes anticlimactic, some people think. But I really enjoyed that about his books. People die and he just moves on. Stephen King moves on to the next scene and stuff. We do get some exposition at the end of the book about the Institute and what they were trying to do, what their goals were and things, which I really liked. There's sort of a moral dilemma. They're doing these experiments on kids and things, and it's the unbiased opinion of the people that work at the Institute that they are doing the right thing. They are saving the world. So they are taking these kids, kidnapping them, possibly even, killing them, through experiments and things. But then in their opinion, it's better to sacrifice the few to save the masses. And it sort of brings up the moral dilemma. If you were put in that type of situation where, you would have to kill, this handful of people, but in return for that, you would save millions and millions of people. So it brings up that nice moral dilemma of, are they doing the right thing by killing these but saving everybody else? Is it still wrong to, kill these few and maybe everybody else dies if they don't? So I really like that aspect of it. It does tie it into Nazi Germany. It does say that the Institute was originally founded with the concentration camps and the Nazis. Sort of that same mindset with the Nazis. They felt like they were doing the right thing to better the planet, save their world, their version of the world. They weren't the villains in their story. They were the heroes. But this, like I said, it was a fantastic read. I gave it 5 stars. If you like Stranger Things, or if you like it, with the dynamic of the children, I think you'll really enjoy this book. For those that don't know, this book is not copying off Stranger Things. Stranger Things was copying off Stephen King, and I believe the creators, I think they're the Duffer Brothers, I believe. They've said in interviews that they've taken inspiration from Firestarter, King's other works. So don't think that this is a copy of Stranger Things. Stephen King came first, and Stranger Things came second. But if you like Stranger Things, and if you like Firestarter and the dynamic of the children in it, I think you'll really enjoy this book. Just remember, this is not a horror novel. It's more of a psychological, thriller novel, mystery. But that's all I really want to say about it. I don't want to give too much more of the plot away or anything. But this was a fantastic read. 5 stars. I highly recommend it. If you're not big into horror but are wanting to try King, this would be a great place to start. But that's all I have for y'all today. So thanks for spending your time with me. Again, my name is Brad, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.